This workshop, I still have a few others coming in. Hello, Faith. Hello, Stephen. Hello, Marge, Mitzi. Is it ICO?
Eco.
Eco. All right. Jake is with us, and so is Riel.
Yes, real.
Okay. Okay, good. And Mary just joined us as well. Well, thank you so much. Well, along with being asked to give the keynote, I was also asked to run a workshop. In my real world, what I work with speakers, presenters, salespeople to help them speak and sell way more better. And at the foundation of my coaching is, well, you can't see because of the background, is I have a book on the 8 principles of engagement. There will be a link, I understand, in the vault. All of us will have access to the vault where you can get a free download of this book, 8 Principles of Engagement. But I wanted to talk about one of those, a couple of those principles, keeping in mind we've only got 20 minutes for me to get through this, staying on time. So the reason for these principles of engagement are to make content stickier. My background comes from instructional design. I mentioned the military. I was 10 years active duty in the Air Force and then 18 years in the reserves. And during my time in the reserves, I was invited to be an instructor. That's what got me here to Atlanta, Georgia. So now, by the seat of my pants, I'm now training people. And I needed to figure this whole thing out. And along the way, I learned about adult learning and adult learning theories. And that's what led me to these principles of engagement, of how do you write content, and now from the stage, how do you deliver content that's going to be sticky, keeping in mind that everybody in your audience is also different. That's a whole nother workshop. How do you deal with a very different audience? But what I can share with you here are some foundational skills that always need to be present, but keeping in mind that it may need to be delivered in a variety of different ways to achieve this objective. And the first one is the principle of ownership. And that is, how do you get your audience to take ownership to listen? So when you think about, and here's that engagement piece right now. I'm going to ask you to respond to this, and there's no wrong answers. That you as a facilitator, when you think about that, you need to get your audience to take ownership. What does that mean to you? How do you feel about that? Go
Yeah,
ahead, Marge.
you ask questions.
You ask questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's certainly one way. Okay. With what? Yes. So that is good, but also with the understanding what's the purpose of the question. The question is yes, but you are correct. So when you think of ownership, what are some other ways that you can get that ownership other than questions, which is great?
Relatability.
Relatability. We want to make sure that it's relevant to our audience.
Hmm.
So I like to give this analogy of us as speakers, as presenters. And that is, imagine behind me that there is a train. There is a train and the doors are wide open. And here I have my audience in front of me. The train is behind me and we're all standing on the platform of the train station. My job, our job as facilitators, is to motivate that audience to get on that train to take this ride. What kind of questions do you think that the audience is asking before they get on that train? If I just said, get on the train, what kind of questions do you think is going on in their mind?
Where are we
Is this
going?
actually relevant to me?
Is this going to be relevant? Is this train ride going to be relevant? Faith, what did you say?
Is this train going to take me where I want to go?
Does it take me where I want to go? Where's the destination? What's going to happen between here and there? What's in it for me? What value does this have?
Is this
So
train
there's
safe?
go ahead, Mary, say it again.
Safe. Is it safe for me
Yes.
to get on this train?
There you go. Now, I mean, that, all of these things are important, and that is another one of these principles of engagement, which talks about safety, which talks about that is your audience prepared? Are they feeling safe? Are they feeling threatened in any way? And that can come from a variety of different things. But thank you for bringing that up. So the audience is saying, what's in it for me? Why should I care? Okay, David, he looks great. It'll be fun to talk to him for a little bit, but what's the value? So that's how you get that ownership of and here what we're saying is that they're taking the ownership to listen at this point. You've got them up to this point. Now the trick is you got to keep them all the way to the end of that train ride. There's a lot of exits. There's a lot of opportunities. Those doors are opening up at every stop, and they've got opportunities to jump out. So there's a lot to keep them on that train. All right, so we've talked about, and again, what we're talking here is looking at how to create additional engagement in presentations with the objective that the more engagement that you have, the more that your audience feels connected, the higher the probability of that audience taking a next step, whatever that happens to be. So we've talked about that principle of the principle of ownership. There are 8 principles. We don't have time to go through all of them, but I want to focus on another one. One that I saw that many people struggled with when I was in corporate. I was in training departments for 30-something years, and one of my responsibilities was training trainers to train. And a lot of these trainers were very highly skilled, highly educated, highly technical individuals working in very technical career fields. So now my job was to train them to train them to be trainers to people that knew nothing about what they did, but they had to teach them. So this is the one they struggled with the most, and that is the principle of complexity. Have you ever been in a training situation in class or in corporate, wherever it happened to be, and the instructor started talking immediately over your head? Just how did that, what did it feel like? Did it feel like you were drowning in information? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm looking around the room and I'm saying, wait a minute, that guy seems like they look like they get it. I'm smart. I should be able to get this. To me, it's kind of like drowning in information. So here I use the analogy of a swimming pool. So what we've described and what you said you experienced was that facilitator diving straight in to the deep end of the swimming pool, and now everybody's being dragged down and drowning in all of that information. So are there questions in there? In the chat?
Yeah, the chat,
Oh,
your
okay.
questions are set up in the chat. I just finished
Well, I
responding to them.
apologize because I didn't realize that those were in there, so I should have made mention to them. But yes, it looks like there's some questions in the chat. I wish I was a poll, but that would have been a lot easier. Okay, so, all right, I'm sorry I got distracted. So we're talking about the swimming pool, and the analogy here, there are 2 things with the principle of complexity. Number 1 is you got to know where your audience is in the swimming pool. But how do you know that? How can you know where your audience is in that swimming pool?
So right now, David, everybody's focused on the question. So I feel like we need a minute to just answer
Okay.
these questions, and
Okay.
because we're
Did those just
highly
pop in?
distracted.
Okay.
I can tell.
All right. Let's look at the questions. What is the primary goal of the principle of ownership?
I don't see.
Yeah, I
Okay,
don't
and that's
see
what
questions.
they're in the chat. Yeah.
I don't see
Yeah.
it in, oh, there they are. Okay.
You see them,
Yeah,
Faith?
yeah.
I don't see them.
But
Yeah.
Jake. put them
Oh,
in.
there they are. Oh, no,
I
that's
don't see the
Jake.
questions in the chat. Did you see them
I
now?
don't
Oh,
see the
Jake put them in there again. So great. Thank you, Jake. Yeah, because yeah, okay, cool. All right, so there we go. There
Okay.
are 3 questions. I was asked, here are why those questions are there. I was asked to provide 3 questions that you would answer at the beginning to assess your current understanding of what we're going to talk about, and then assess your understanding when we get to the end. And all right, so let's see. Who would like to answer the first question? What's the primary goal? Now we've gone through ownership. What's the primary goal of it?
To make the audience feel the message is relevant to them.
Right. C would be the correct response. And then the second question is also about ownership. Which opening line best describes or best reflects the principle of ownership? I have to read them. I don't remember what the right answer is. Okay, there you go. By the end, okay, all right. Which one do you think? Which
said B.
opening line best describes? Say that again.
Oh, I said B.
B. And you said right. By the end of this
Okay,
session,
good.
so that principle of ownership is all about setting the stage. Why are we here? What is the purpose? What value does this have? What am I going to tell them that's going to get them motivated to get on that train? And then there was a third question: which of the following best demonstrates audience ownership of your message? They take notes. The audience asks for the slides. The audience applies your advice. The audience
said C.
applauds loudly at the end. Woo! Which one?
I said C.
Yeah.
C? Who said C? Raise your hand if you say C. Raise your hand if you say it's something else. All right. Raise your hand if you don't have an answer at all. All right. So now we've looked at those. So we're done with those. Great. It was good. And it was a good little review there as well. So we were talking about the principle. We've talked about the principle of ownership. We talked about the principle of complexity. I had asked the question of we talked about that the principle of complexity, the main part of it is understanding where is your audience in that swimming pool. So how do you know where your audience is in that swimming pool? There's the question.
Ask.
Okay. When?
I would ask towards the beginning of my talk or my presentation, and I might ask like how many, like you did, how many here feel this way, or how many here feel that way. So,
Yeah, definitely. So there's several opportunities. Asking the host a variety of questions, sending out a survey of some sort. If you know the group, if it's a networking group that you're a part of and you know the group, then certainly those help in understanding your audience. But one of the best ways is ask them at the very beginning. Now, by asking questions at the beginning of your presentation, what benefits does that have for you as the speaker by asking some questions up front? What benefit does that have to you?
It gets the audience engaged.
Gets the audience engaged. Certainly. That's one. What's the second one?
You care
in
about
tune.
them.
You care about them. Okay. Someone else, Mary?
Yeah, it tells you where they're at so that you know how to direct your talk, because you want your talk meaningful, because you could be all full of information, but if it's not meaningful or relevant for them, like if you're going to go above and beyond their head and overwhelm them, then what's the point, right? So you might just have to, I think it helps you really temperate your discussion and how to address what it is their need is. Identify their need.
Yeah. So definitely. All correct responses is to engage the audience. Certainly a great way to engage them if there are relevant questions. And then Mary, what you said is now as the presenter, it certainly gives you an idea of where you've now assessed your audience and where are they at in that swimming pool. So there is a third one. It's a little obscure maybe, but I get this when many folks who I work with talk about that those first couple of minutes on the stage is when they feel most nervous. Would you say that falls in? Yeah. It's all of us. Yeah. Now, one of the ways to work through that nervousness, questions. So now I've got a couple of moments where I can kind of settle in a little bit. It's now focused on the audience, and it gives folks a little bit of that time to kind of get centered on the stage. So we talked about the principle of complexity is understanding where is your audience in that swimming pool, meeting them now with the caveat here that you could have an audience that people are all over the place inside of that swimming pool. That's a whole nother workshop on how I can help my clients figure out how do you massage the content so it's going to be relatable to everybody. What I'm talking about here, we're looking at those foundational skills, knowing that the principle of complexity is important. The principle of complexity is all about knowing your audience and tailoring your message so it doesn't drown your audience. How you configure that, now that becomes a whole nother, that's the next layer on top of that foundation. The same thing with the principle of ownership, that at the foundation, I know as a speaker, as a presenter, that it's important for me to get them on the train. Everybody that's standing on this platform right now, every single person in here is different. So I've got to tailor this message, this motivation, this enthusiasm, this who, what, where, when, why, and how introduction that's going to appeal to this audience that is everywhere in this swimming pool. So I mentioned that there were 8 principles. We've looked at 2 principles. The next one, I'm going to sneak in here, and hopefully I just demonstrated it, and that is the principle of repetition. Why is that principle of repetition important? Go ahead, Mary.
Oops.
I'm sorry.
Mitzi?
There you go. Go ahead, Mary. Yep.
Okay, repetition, well, I think that it just reinforces what we need to learn. It takes the brain so many times to actually absorb what it is that we need to remember and to contain, right? Because there's a lot of different things going on when we have someone speaking to us.
Yep. And we as adults have a lot going on in our brain, and I think that in some cases we have a lot more than children. We're probably in some cases harder to train than children, I would say. I've never trained children. I don't have children, so I don't know firsthand, but I've heard that from educators and so on that we might be more difficult than kids. So we were talking about the principle of repetition, and keeping in mind that all of these principles, these 5 minutes left. Okay, thank you, Jake. That all of these principles, that they're all designed for one purpose, and that is to create sticky content. That if we can motivate our audience to get on that train, if they're motivated, if they've been motivated enough to get on that train, something's been said that's starting to get the juices flowing. So it's starting to get sticky. The brain is becoming a little more pliable at this point. Things can stick to it now. It's not a hard rock. And if we can tailor our message to this audience without talking over their heads and not talking underneath them and finding that middle ground, what does that do? That keeps your audience on the train. It keeps them with you to the destination. Along the way, reiterating, why are we here? What's the purpose? What value does this have? All of that happening along the train ride. And along the way, well, that would probably be a demonstration of the principle of repetition. Why are we here? What's the purpose? What value does this have? That's bringing in that principle of repetition. So let me stop and ask, what questions do you have?
Well, I think, David, that what you presented here is fabulous. So I'm a former school principal, and now I'm doing research in adult development stages with Harvard. And so just applying these principles, I think what you've done is you simply stated is that you need a foundation in order to which people to build and compound that information that you're presenting so that they can assimilate it into what they already know, and then they can apply it. Because if they
Right.
don't have that foundation, they're not going to be able to apply it. So you beautifully, eloquently stated that. So thank you. Nicely done.
Thank you, Mary. Marge? And I'll
Yeah,
get to Faith next. I'll get to Faith next. Go ahead, Marge.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your presentation, David. And one of the things that I wanted to add was in the beginning of a talk, I always tell a joke that is appropriate for the topic and appropriate for the audience, because then everybody's laughing. And then, it just, I don't know, it just feels more natural to just kind of keep on going. Everybody's in a good mood. And I feel like we need to laugh more than we haven't been laughing that much.
I agree. I agree. There are a gazillion ways to open a presentation, but all of them, to me, have the same objective, and that is to engage your audience. So if it's telling a joke, if it's telling a story, if it's just showing a picture, whatever it is, it should immediately engage your audience. So good. Go ahead, Faith.
I wanted to comment that I loved your demonstration of actually using analogies, like the swimming pool or the train, because I think that's really very, very helpful when you're trying to explain concepts that might be a little bit like you want to define them, but you want to define them in a way that everybody can relate to them. So I love that. Right away, I could picture the train, I could picture the swimming pool. It was really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. So we're down to our last minute and a half. Please post my email address. Let me go ahead and put that in the chat. Let me get to that. Any additional questions? Any comments? Could I do something better? All right.
David, I also wanted to say that your ability to go with the flow, because we had the questions come in, and sometimes people can get really flustered with that, like that whole idea of that has to be perfect. So it's okay if something comes up, it could be a little messy. It just makes people it allows people to see us as human beings.
I appreciate that comment. That I've also had a lot of practice. I've been training people for a very long time, and even virtual, did radio broadcasting, knew where my hands were on the board and so on. And yeah, I get nervous, I get panic when I saw those questions for the first time. Maybe it didn't show, but inside I was falling apart. But so thank you for that.
Yeah, very nice.
But that's a good point, that if you find yourself in that situation, the best thing to do is just pause. And the pause is going to feel a gazillion times longer to you than it does to your audience. Just stop. Just take a breath and figure it out. Breakout rooms are going to close in 7 seconds. Holy smokes. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, sir.